Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Please subscribe, leave a review, comment, share, and consider supporting the podcast on Patreon, even at the producer and sponsorship levels. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Helle Jorgensen about ESG insight and oversight and the steward of the future. Helle Jorgensen, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure being here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Copenhagen. I'm in Honolulu. So we have quite a time difference between us as we're joining together today. But those are the wonders of technology, isn't it? It's amazing. It's a wonderful opportunity to be with you. You have such a wonderful background. And today we're going to be talking about ESG insight and oversight and the steward of the future. The steward of the future piece is based on your recent book, Steward of the Future, a guide for competent boards. So we'll be talking about your book. And of course, we want to get into ESGs and really talk more about what organizational leaders and in this case, particularly boards can do along those lines to help with those sorts of goals and responsibilities within organizations. As we get started, I wanted to share Helle's bio with everybody. Helle Jorgensen is the CEO of Competent Boards, which offers the global online climate and ESG competent board certificate programs with a faculty of over 100 renowned international board members, executives, and experts. She has a 30-year track record in turning environment, social governance, climate and sustainability risks into innovative and profitable business opportunities. She works with many global Fortune 500 board members and executives, as well as smaller companies and investors. In 2021, she was chosen by the World Economic Forum as an expert for corporate governance, leadership, and emerging multinationals. In 2020, she was awarded the Global Impact Award and named one of 5 people in ESGs to look for. Ms. Jorgensen is the author of the newly published book, Stewards of the Future, a guide for competent boards. What a fantastic background. It's a pleasure to be with you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners before we really dive on into the conversation?
There's one thing that I'm very proud of, and that is that Stewards of the Future, the book, is now an Amazon bestseller in the category of corporate governance. So I'm very pleased with that. And part of that, thank you for getting up so early in the morning to join me. And the fun thing here is that both of us were supposed to be, I guess, in the same time zone in North America. Now I'm in Europe and you, I guess, US, but Hawaii. So here we are in 2D.
Yeah. And it was fun getting to know you a little bit and chatting in the pre-interview. And it is funny. Yeah. Getting stuck in Honolulu. There are worse things, but we were both joining each other from our hotel rooms in our respective locations, not where we planned on being today when we originally set out to record. So thank you for your flexibility. And I'm just super excited to really dive on in. Why don't you start by just framing out the book? Now, obviously, your whole organization, Competent Boards, is focused around this area. but why did you title it Stewards of the Future? And what do you see as some of the main attributes of stewards of the future in organizations?
Thanks so much for that. So I started Competent Boards, so the company where we educate board of directors and executives, business professionals, investors, because I saw that we had this lack of the insight, the foresight in the boardrooms, and perhaps also all other places, to really make sure that we were getting the best value based on values out of all of these companies. And that was back in 2018. I started in 2019. We kickstarted this competent boards movement, actually in Europe, during the World Economic Forum in Davos. And John, I can tell you, there was not that many leaders at that point that thought that this was something that should be top of mind. That was something, yeah, of course, companies should do all of these, the right thing to do. But fewer really saw that this was something that should be on the board agenda. Stewards of the future, what we talk about a lot in, every time is like stewardship. And you can look at stewardship as stewardship of your money, right? Stewardship of the land, stewardship of other matters, water, etc. I wanted to see us as leaders, and yes, competent boards, so board of directors, but it goes for you and me as well. It goes for all of us. How can we be stewards of the future? How can we, every time we make a decision, think about what's the impact of that decision, and therefore make sure that we are informed to make those informed decisions that we do every single time. And from a leadership perspective, I think it's more urgent now than ever. I couldn't help thinking back, if we go back to 2019, we had not heard about COVID. We did have a bit of a mental health pandemic at that point as well, but that have only gotten worse. And now we unfortunately have a war on our hand as well. So we have now the great resignation or reshuffling, depending on how you want to look at it. And now we have inflation and everything else. So if we as leaders, if we as board of directors, as we as investors, as we as human beings, do not see ourselves as stewards of the future, I think we're letting down not only our employees, not only our customers, not only our suppliers, we're actually letting down our kids.
Yeah, well said. And you're right. Boards of directors and executives and leaders in organizations, they're all stewards. We're all stewards within our own spheres, within our own arenas. And it's important for us to consider all those different facets and areas of stewardship. And they're all important. But I'm glad that you and your team are spending time and focusing on this and trying to elevate the dialogue around ESGs so that it can be more on the forefront for boards of directors and for senior leaders. Because like you said, it never has it been more important for the environmental, social, and governance components and considerations to really be given the full force of the power in organizations. There is so much opportunity for good if we just direct or redirect some of our energies towards those areas, and we can still be very profitable businesses. We can still be very successful in a traditional sense, but also kind of more from a stakeholder capitalism perspective, also recognizing, triple bottom line components and making sure that we're doing good for everybody. We're doing good for everybody, not just driving profits or value for shareholders, but really making sure that everyone, all constituencies, are being benefited through what we're doing in our organization.
Yeah, and I think if we go some years back, yes, you need to choose, right? I mean, kind of like, okay, we're doing this and we're good corporate citizens. However, it does cost us a little bit of money, and we're hoping on the reputational impact and all of that. Now, you have those that are going to finance you, your bank, and if they're not already doing so, they will ask you questions about your environment, social governance issues. Not from a good heart perspective, but from a simple risk perspective. Will they get their money back? Your employees, if they're not already, they will be asking you about what's the purpose? Are we here to do something that's going to harm future generations? Or are we here to do something that's part of the solution? Talent, if they have not already, if you are able and if you're a successful company, you will hopefully be hiring people. And if they have not asked you a question about what's your purpose, how does your values align with their values, they will. So, customers, all of these different stakeholders, and you said stakeholder capitalism. I mean, again, this is not for see how good we are. This is simply, if you're not doing this, you're not going to be sustainable in a financial way of thinking, right? So that's the positive thing now. It's, if we can find anything positive in this world, it's like all of these things are aligning. Yes, John, you can find examples where you can tell me, well, but right now, oil and gas prices are going up and all of this. But at the end of the day, I think we are going to see so much scrutiny of the companies. We want to see leaders that care. We want to see leaders that care about the employees, the talent, their customers, the suppliers, all of these different stakeholders. And you can't fake that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's a mindset. And that's what I'm hoping to do with the book. And of course, all of our, the ESG and Climate Competent Board's certificate and designation programs, kind of like have that, both get the insight, get the foresight, have that mindset, have a network of other global leaders that you can bounce ideas on and say, what are you seeing? I just came from one of our alumni and faculty calls, and we're having these global dialogues on the things that's right now top of mind. And that value that gives to kind of like saying, oh, what are you hearing? What are you doing? What about your employees, etc.? And have that mindset. I think that's not only invaluable now, but simply, matter of fact for doing business in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, the business case for this is very, very clear. If for no other reason than just the pure bottom line dollars and cents of the organization, everyone should be focusing on ESGs. It's just a matter of fact. And it's the expectation more and more of investors. It's the expectations of governments and regulators. It's the expectations of employees. People want to work for organizations that are doing good with the power and the influence and the money that they have, that they put back into the economy. And so it just has to be a focus of organizations and the organizations of tomorrow if they're going to stay relevant. Even if you don't actually care at all about climate issues, or you don't actually care about social impact issues, you do care about profits, you need to be focusing on this. And so I think all of that's wonderful, and you're doing great work there. So I'm curious what some of the biggest challenges have been as you're working with executives and with those around the board table, as you're trying to help them understand the necessity and the practicality of focusing on ESGs. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Academy. Courses, micro-credentials, and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. All HCI Academy courses, micro-credentials, and certificates are designed, developed, and delivered by award-winning and internationally renowned scholars, educators, thought leaders, executives, and practitioners. Our courses, micro-credentials, and certificates will help you make your mark on the future of work and make an immediate impact in your organizations. Check out the HCI Academy and our many course offerings and certificates to upskill and reskill for the future of work. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.
Going back to that mindset and going back to what you said kind of like before, well, we can do all of this, but how much money will this cost? Instead of saying, okay, if we don't do this, how much money will it cost us? So there's a bit, and I see this change all the time, where suddenly you have more, instead of thinking silos, you think, how do all of these things interrelate? Instead of thinking short term or long term, you think, how do I make the right short term decisions to get to the right long term outcome? And that's perhaps where we talk ESG. And sometimes when you talk ESG, you could say, well, that's financial and it's a little bit of tick boxing, where you want to also think about the impact of those different actions that you make. And we can discuss a lot about all of these, but I see you have a little bit of that, oh, they're activists that's coming and saying something about our company, and why? And I'm like, okay, put yourself in the shoes of an activist. Put yourself in the shoes of your talent. Put yourself in the shoes of your customers. What are the questions you would ask this company? So you should not be, hopefully, surprised when you have those questions coming at you. I hear still, you said that I worked with this for 30 years, so I but I still hear this like, well, investors want this, and it's so hard, and then we have those other investors, and then we have those short term, and then I'm like, well, you're getting the investors you deserve. If you are the one who say, this is our purpose of our company, this is what we stand for, this is our business model, this is how we're making money, this is our values, this is all of these different things, and you put that in front of your, you could say key stakeholder, if we say shareholders, you put it in front of your key stakeholder, if you think employees, etc., and you get the shareholders you deserve, you get the employees you deserve, because you need to be able to communicate, and that's some of the things that I see is changing, where it's been like when I grew up, right? We didn't have all of these going out on social media and talking about a company. That was not it. But now we need as leaders to listen. We need to use our ears, put the ears to the ground, listen to what it is that both the young people are saying, our customers, and all of the other stakeholders, and figuring out, how do we communicate best? But know what it is that the values of the companies, know the purpose of the company, know your stakeholders, communicate to them what you believe is most important. If they disagree, they might be out of there. If they agree, you're having, people that trust and that loyalty.
I think those are all really good points. And I can't help but think a little bit about just the shifting kind of sentiments and attitudes amongst cohorts of the labor force. So, you can't paint with too broad a brush. Obviously, everyone is different. Everyone has their unique perspectives and salient motivators. And so all of that, laying that out as a caveat up front, there also are some kind of common generational differences. And we know, for example, that younger millennial and Gen Z workers, they really not only want, but really demand a focus on social impact, ESGs, corporate social responsibility, ethical organizations. Like they really demand it. And if they don't see it, they're not working there. So you mentioned the great reshuffling, the great resignation, the great awakening, however we want to term it. That's one of the drivers for this population as a whole. Is they're waking up and saying, wait a minute, the organization I've been working with, that I'm devoting the vast majority of my time, energy, passions, talent towards, isn't actually making the world a better place. I'm out of there. Now, there are other factors too. I don't mean to oversimplify, but that's one of the driving factors. And so then the question becomes, how do we get those perspectives of younger workers in the labor force into these executive positions, into the boardrooms that are largely made up of people, from Gen X and even baby boomers still. Not to say that they can't also share these values, but again, kind of collectively in the aggregate, as we're talking about meta trends, that seems to be the case. So how do we start to infuse boards with these kind of fresh, younger understandings of the world and attitudes?
Some fresh perspectives. How we do it, of course, depends from company to company. Should they do it? Yes. How they can do it, everything from, in every single organization, if you have, hired younger people, you have someone there that often are more than willing to actually give you their opinion. And you can go out, have lunch, have a discussion, bring a round table, have that, instead of you think you're mentoring them, ask them to mentor you. And you can go out and have a small group of young individuals that use almost like an advisory board. Right? We are talking in terms of having these kind of like younger and say, okay, what do you think about this? There's one thing you should not do, and that's say, well, you know what? They don't really have the experience. You need to have much more experience. Yes, you can say that. And yes, you need to also have those with all of that experience. But I think one of the things that I really feel that we are leaving not only money on the table, but innovation on the table and frankly, livelihoods on the table, is that if we don't listen. It's not saying everything that whoever says is what we're going to do, but you have that opportunity to have a touch point. You have that opportunity to have that dialogue, understand what are they thinking, and communicate what it is from the other end, and then actually give that task of saying, how can we do this better? There's nothing better than empowerment. But often we think, I'm pointing on myself, us older, still young, that, and we've tried it all. We know best. And I'm not going to say I'm good at this, because I think we all struggling in terms of really listening and really empowering. And then having that conversation. But especially, John, I think now where we have been through the whole COVID, and especially now where we have a mental health pandemic, especially now where it even perhaps worse with the latest climate report, and after that, the war in Ukraine, none of us are able to solve anything of this alone. all of us need to have fresh perspective in the boardroom. All of us need to rethink our supply chain. All of us need to rethink, how are we going to keep working from home? Are we going to do this in different ways? All of us need to rethink our relationship with our customers. And especially, I mean, we like it or not, but the youth are the future. So, you know, if you want to be a sustainable company for the long run, well, you know, listen to the future.
So well said, Helle. It has just been a pleasure. I know at the time, I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. It is flown by. So much that you just said there that is so wonderful, and I would love to unpack it all. We just don't have the time. You're welcome back anytime. We can continue the conversation. I will just note before we start to wrap up that, again, there are lots of ways that you can tap into the wisdom, the insights, and the perspectives of younger individuals in the labor force. Simply have conversations with them, right? If you're mentoring and coaching them already, have conversations and seek their input. You can do more formal things like creating shadow boards. There's all sorts of things you can do to gain those perspectives. And that doesn't discount the value that the experience, you know, of those who are more experienced on your boards that they bring. That's important too, of course. But let's not forget that we have these great resources there, right there before us, if we can tap into it. As we wrap up today, I just wanted to give you a moment to share with listeners how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Oh, thanks so much. Yes, it's flown by, and I'm glad to hear that you read Stewards of the Future, a guide for competent boards, and the shadow boards that I did not mention. So thanks for that. Clearly, you can connect with me via LinkedIn, Twitter. So Helle, Helle, and then Bank, BANK, and then Jorgensen, JORGENSEN. Danish name, and competent boards, easier, competentboards.com. And clearly the book, not only in Amazon, but in Barnes & Noble and Indigo and other bookstores. So my final comment, I guess, one of the things that we did talk about and I put in the book is also wisdom from indigenous, this 7th-generation principle of thinking about every small thing we do, every action we take, especially perhaps also the bigger one. Think about what impact will that have 7 generations from now. So the 7 generations principles, and that is in essence being a steward of the future.
I love it. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Helle and her team can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There is no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of your problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for your individuals, teams, and organizations. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership: Ordinary, Everyday Actions that Produce Extraordinary Results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Please subscribe, leave a review, comment, share, and consider supporting the podcast on Patreon, even at the producer and sponsorship levels. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.